I call the meeting to order at 6:30. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Trustee Pierce,
Present.
trustee Masek,
Here.
trustee Peterson,
Here.
trustee Bluthart,
Here.
trustee Berman,
Here.
trustee Dominiak,
Here.
Mayor Gardner.
Present. First item on the Committee of the Whole agenda is approval of the January 26, 2020 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes as presented. Entertain a motion in a second.
So moved.
Motion trustee Bluthart,
Second.
second trustee Berman. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Pierce,
Aye.
Masek,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Bluthart,
Yes.
Berman,
Yes.
Dominiak,
Yes.
6 voting yes, motion carries. Next item is a mayoral report. The only thing that I was going to report at this time, I know that this evening there'll be a story on the news. It's the 50th anniversary of Fisher Paper, so they're doing a story. So again, congratulate them on their long tenured success as a business in Antioch. Any citizens wishing to address the board at the Committee of the Whole meeting? We have one hand up. If you are online and there's anybody additional that wants to speak, raise your virtual hand on Zoom and Jim Moran will get our attention. All right, Ms. Jacobson, can you hear us? Ms. Jacobson, you're on mute. Any luck, Jim? Ms. Jacobson, I give it another 30 seconds to see if we can get you unmuted. Otherwise, we will go to the individual that's in the room that wishes to address the board. So, sir, while we try this, why don't you come up here to the podium and tell us your name and
Yeah. Hi there, folks. First off, I just want to say my name's Michael Leone. I do not actually live in Antioch, full disclosure, but I went to y'all's schools. I live in Lindenhurst. I don't have too much to say. I just want to say thank you to the mayor for like the deal regarding for your awareness regarding the iron in the well water or whatever a little bit ago, and just really hope that we can all come together to get more clean drinking water to everyone whenever possible. And I mean, I know it's wonky with the wells in the unincorporated areas, but I mean, ideally, just getting more people on the pipes and stuff, and just want to thank you very much for that.
thank you for letting us know. And any luck, Jim? Okay. So Ms. Jacobson, if you're able to get through, we will come back to you. We do have another time to address the board when the regular meeting starts immediately after this Committee of the Whole. So hopefully around 7 o'clock-ish. All right. First item on the regular business is the quota presentation on the downtown beautification project. I believe on Zoom we have Kevin Clark and Deb Simon. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that via Zoom. So Kevin, I see, and
Come in.
all right, there we go.
Here.
All right, the floor is yours.
Great, I'm gonna share my screen. Give me a second here. Okay. Yeah. All right, can you guys see that?
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you for having us. We wanted to give you a brief presentation on the report that we put together, draft report for the downtown beautification plan. Again, my name is Kevin Clark. I'm a principal with the Lakota Group, and I'm joined with Deb Salmon, who is a senior associate with us, who we've been very involved in this project. Just wanted to start out by reminding everybody kind of what the scope of this was. What was the study area we were looking at to address? And as we got into this project, it was defined as Main Street kind of coming through town, but then all of your downtown streetscapes, those kind of key streets, Orchard, Toft, Lake, looking at Skidmore and the band shell in the back, the associated parking areas behind your buildings, behind Main Street on both sides, both east and west, thinking about how to make improvements there, looking at what we're calling kind of those alleys, the green alleys that stretch between the parking areas to Main Street. And then of course, the vacant lot, the vacant parcel at Depot in Orchard and Main. That was the study area. We want to go through a little bit about our process and what we did. It was a 3-phase process. The first phase was with us engaging and what we call engage and discover, and we were doing analysis, our own field work, our own analysis of the conditions, really engaging the community and starting to get up to speed on what people's thoughts are, what their opinions are, which we'll go through. The second part was envision and explore, where we started to come up with ideas and concepts that we could show visually how to make improvements, and then engage again so that people could give us their opinions on what they like or didn't like. And then the third part is what we call implement. And that was us pulling all this together into a cohesive plan and document that outlines kind of the preferences, the concepts that came out as preferred, and then costs that go with it so that we can have that discussion of priorities at a village level. As we talked to folks, we had focus groups. We had listening sessions with the mayor, ex-mayor, the mayor, current mayor, village leaders, village staff, local organizations, local businesses, property owners, and residents. We also were at the Wine Walk pop-up workshop in June. We had an online survey to follow up on that. And then after we developed concepts, we were at the Wine Walk again, engaging folks on what they liked. And then we came back to kind of what our steering committee at the village staff and leader level to talk about what was preferred. And then let Deb go through a little bit of that phase 1 and the stuff that we were studying, and then I'll talk about some of the concepts and what came out.
Hi there, thanks for having me tonight, having us. So as Kevin said, we took a comprehensive look at the whole downtown area, familiarized ourselves, did a walk around with our team, and then really engaged the community in a variety of ways to look at the various pieces and parts that make up downtown. And so we did a lot of talking with people about placemaking, public space character of downtown, streetscape character, safety improvements, wayfinding and signage, and then finally looking specifically at that vacant property and what people have been, wishing about and thinking of in terms of that space. So we can dive into these different study areas and give you more ideas of what people were talking about and thinking about. In terms of placemaking, we think of this as interventions, can be very simple interventions that either create character, enhance the character that you already have. It could be anything from a pop-up event, food truck, quick, simple, interactive events. It could be art-based. A good example of this was you had the history walk that was done earlier, where you kind of highlighted different areas of the historical qualities of Antioch through pop-up interventions and ephemeral paintings and things like that. Some of the things that people were really interested in terms of placemaking were alley activation, looking at an outdoor movie venue, food trucks, any kind of interactive art, sculptural seating, and really looking at the alleyways and interactive art as part of that. It seems like a lot of people noted the strength that Antioch has in terms of local artists, and kind of banking on that is really an important aspect and would be nice to bring your unique character into downtown. You can go on to the next slide. So hand in hand with placemaking is public spaces and the interest in people having more, there being more public realm spaces within the downtown. People especially noted alleyways as having opportunity to become these really cool activity nodes. You have that in some cases already, but it's just kind of emphasizing that more. And people were really looking for more like plazas and open spaces with seating and places to gather. And really, I think this goes in a continuum of large space versus small space and anything in between. So small gathering nodes, medium-sized places for markets and things like that. And then, of course, the bigger events. Some of the areas that people looked at as being ripe for this were the parking lots, the vacant property, and the band shell. And you can see some of the preferred images here of how to highlight the alley spaces, string lighting with big picnic tables to invite like interaction, and just bringing in plantings and seating nodes and enhancing entryways with plantings and seating. So those were some different interventions that people preferred. The next aspect is the streetscape also goes hand in hand with the others. And really, it's important to note that all of these things kind of work together. They're not standalone items. So you can create elements of your streetscape with bringing in public realm types of spaces and creating wayfinding and things like that. So all of these things are interactive with each other. In terms of streetscape, there was a great interest in enhancing the downtown streetscape character, which has already been begun, but kind of building on that, looking for more of a cohesive character for downtown. I think there is a preference for enhancing the historic character of downtown, so a little bit of a bent towards the traditional, but yeah, with a little twist on it that can still bring out that artistic aspect of Antioch. Some of the things that people were interested in the streetscape environment were seating pockets, branded planters, and incorporating trees. You can see by the preferred images here, just this festive lighting, thinking about signage along the street front in terms of, both things that might project out over the streetscape, as well as storefronts themselves, seating pockets, variety of seating, and of course, trees being an important component part of the streetscape. Many people mention the existing tree canopy that you have on Main Street as being an incredible asset, and you'll see that in later concepts, we've kind of incorporated ways of maintaining those trees in the streetscape. Some of the some specific things that people mentioned were thinking about street frontage enhancements that would make the streetscape a little bit more pedestrian friendly. And I think that's particularly on Main Street. And then especially noting that Toft Avenue is kind of ripe for having, breaking that massive space down and introducing more streetscape elements to scale it down to the pedestrian level and just make it more of a charming place that connects in a better way to the Main Street and Lake Street streetscapes. So you can move on to safety improvements was another thing that people were concerned about. There was a lot of talk about the mid-block crossings on both Toft and Main as being really important for moving pedestrians, through the main downtown space. All of the intersections were noted as being rife for safety improvements. As well, there was a lot of interest in a shared street concept that would enhance the pedestrian experience and also just slow down the vehicular traffic. There was also interest in bike routes and bike racks. So you can see some of the interventions that we shared and what was very favorably rated on the left-hand side here. You can see the outdoor seating where we're cladding it, where it is clad with bollards so you can be out on the street but yet still feel safe. Just different interventions for introducing bike routes and popping out specialty pavers at crosswalks and intersections to just enliven the space, but also create safer crossings and slow down traffic for improved safety as well. Wayfinding and signage is another important aspect of the downtown area. And when we talk about wayfinding and signage, we were talking both about kind of the branding identity signage on the higher level, and then wayfinding signage, which is kind of a subcomponent that can work along with that. Antioch has a great brand, and bringing in some of the larger scale identity signage would really enhance the entry into the downtown realm. Once you get within the downtown realm, the wayfinding signage can pick up and shoot you to different other specialty aspects that are kind of the accent points within downtown Antioch, whether it be pointing out a historic site or a specific feature of the downtown landscape. Let's see. One of the main things, there was a lot of interest in having overarching identity gateways for both Main Street and the Toft area, as well as directional signage to highlight some of the things that are in downtown itself and some of the things that are extended a little bit beyond downtown, like the wetlands area and the sawmill. And also interest in just using signage to highlight some of the just rich history that Antioch has. And then lastly, we wanted to talk more specifically with people about the vacant lot. It's been there a long time, and people have thought about it a lot, what they want to see there. And it was interesting to talk with everybody about it. Really what came to the fore, and this is where we started our design work, really was by talking with people, but really what really came to the fore was that people wanted a flexible, open green space that would be kind of something for everyone, focused on multi-generational interaction, but would also really be an open creek walk that would have a definite kind of nature aspect to it on some level. And that would also link to, adjacencies like the sawmill and the school, the museums, the band shell. And it was also important that the space be just an interactive focal point for the downtown, so that it's kind of this iconic space for downtown while still linking to things beyond downtown. And as you'll see, as we move forward in the presentation, you'll see that some of the specific elements that were mentioned here and built into the design were having a special event space, having a place that really is, again, this focal point public town square for Antioch. There was a lot of interest in water feature and splash pad playgrounds and places for kids. Definite interest in having a creek walk, overlook with bridges, and then lots of different places for seating and gathering, whether it be permanent or pop-up. And then also just a space that would support market day activities and lots of pop-up events. And so with that, that kind of concludes the, oh, I'm sorry, forgot about this part. Just to wrap this up, we looked at kind of just this aspect of looking at what people saw as being the overall strengths and the overall areas for improvement of Antioch. And this gives you a sense of, you know, the small town charm, the local business, the strength of the local businesses, the walkability, the historical character, and the adjacency or nearness of Metro were all seen as great strengths. And the weaknesses, just looking for more family friendly, building on the current character to create a little bit more consistency, and enhancing the wayfinding sign throughout downtown, and really investing in Toff Street, and looking at parking, better utilizing the current parking lot, parking spaces. So that is kind of what all of our inputs were. And with this is what was all this information was our jumping off point to go into the next phase, which is concept development and looking at what these spaces could be. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Kevin and he'll dive in.
Yeah, so taking all that information into account, looking at, you know, knowing Antioch, walking it, talking to so many people, having these engagement events helped us really figure out what's the program, what is the vision, what's the character and aesthetic that people are really searching for? How do we make it not tired, which was just a word that was used. People love that building stock. People wanted just to refresh it. So when we started putting pen to paper, we developed a bunch of concepts in these different areas, the streetscapes, alleyway prototypes. So when we say prototype, looking at kind of one alleyway and thinking about how that could be, maybe that idea can be applied to certain other alleyways or other areas in between. We looked at Toft Avenue, a couple concepts for that, and thinking about how we can make that a better, more useful space. Clearly the Bandshell and Skidmore Drive together and how that can be upgraded and thought about in a new way. And then the vacant property, of course. So I'm going to go through some of these concepts and kind of what came out in the wash. We had three concepts for what we call the streetscape prototypes. This is largely Main Street. When we talk about that, we talk about Main Street and Lake Street. And I'd say, you know, we got clear direction when we engaged the public on what they wanted to see. But the key things between this, the key things that people really liked, because each one of these has images tied to it when we showed it, creating a clear, unimpeded pedestrian zone on Main, on Lake, making sure that people can walk on the street. There's some buckling, there's some heaving with some of the sidewalks right now. Want to address that. People, you know, Deb mentioned the canopy of the trees, which by and large people really like and really love. So trying to figure out a way that we can maintain that, and if there is a tree that's in poor health, making sure that we can replace that. But thinking in this concept, expanding around those just with curb planter areas that have a lower level landscape, which would be these green zones, pulling the benches and all the kind of furniture away from the buildings, to decluttering that zone, that pedestrian zone, and creating almost an amenity zone, along with the lights and bike racks and planters and movable planters and things that would all be in that zone. That creates that character. So as we think about clustering these things in the right space, it doesn't happen at the building edge. And all of these elements work together. So we showed ideas for different palettes and got very specific with how those things work together. And then people gave us their preferences as we showed it. So as I look at this next page, some of the elements that people really liked, like these movable planters and urns, that kind of defines that edge. It gives you that extra fortification at the edge of the curb. As we talk about benches and kind of traditional seating where trees might be in that pedestrian zone with pavers, people really like that, and the curb planters. The idea that we would have some kind of custom or just traditional, nice, sturdy benches that are located throughout downtown was a big sell for a lot of people. And then really keeping that kind of, maybe upgrading your lights now, but keeping that traditional light that you guys have, not just roadway lighting, but also that pedestrian level lighting. The scale of that's important. So we know we need to light the road, but also having this pedestrian scale lighting in between that maybe have a banner arm so that you can, promote your cool brand on those banners. So these are the types of things that, that we're pushing forward as we got feedback on the streetscape designs. And then looking at the alleyway prototypes, and this was a concept that we did for one of the alleyways, where we can really, interject some life and a little bit of art and a little bit of placemaking into these spaces. What people liked about this was kind of that sinuous, slightly curving path that comes through, having areas where there's seating opportunities off to the side, and maybe there's some kind of sculptural seating or something that has a little bit of color, something that adds a little bit of interest. People really like this idea of overhead gateway arches, something that brands it, something that brands you and speaks to Antioch's character. It could be some cool arch element, ironwork, metal, that people really responded well to in the visual preference surveys we did. Having some kind of playful element, we kind of, thinking about how you engage. And we kept hearing about, we need to have more family-friendly places downtown. And so responding to that in some way with either temporary or sculptural type elements in these spaces. And then really thinking about, and I know you have a really strong garden club, and there's been a lot of thought and effort put into some of these spaces, and really engaging landscape in these spaces so that it feels green, but it's low maintenance and it's layered, and it has a lot of variety at all points in the season. So not everything's paved, and engaging folks like that to be kind of the purveyors of what that looks like and helping maintain. It just has that extra layer of what Antioch is all about. So just a few images of things that, again, some of these things you've seen because they rated really high in the visual preference. It really drove us to some of the designs that we came up with. But this just gives you that flavor and that character at a conceptual level of what it can be. So those art interventions, the idea that you could have just a little outdoor display, cinema, pop-up things or sculptural seating, the play element. And again, like this image, which is in Urbana-Champaign, it's just the simplest little alley, and it's got, Cranes Alley, it's got this movable seating and some overhead lighting and some cool landscape, right? And that's the kind of stuff that just adds a little bit of touch. It's intimate, it feels interesting, and you guys have that unique character. It's not something you see in a lot of downtowns. Toft. This is a bigger discussion, right? I know this has been a discussion for a long time because when I did work in Antioch over 10 years ago, we were talking about Toft and the way it functions in downtown. It's overly wide. It's a super wide street, and it's a secondary street. So it ends up being this cut through. There's not a lot of activity on it because very few buildings actually front it. And then there's this really there's a lot of parking off of it. So we were challenged from the beginning, and we started talking to people about what they wanted to see on Toft. And we did a couple of concepts for this, but the clear things that we thought people really were pushing us to do is create more of a pedestrian shared street. And when we say shared street, that means it could be a curbless street. It could be more like a plaza that cars are allowed to drive through, but you do vertical things to keep cars in their place and allow people to use the spaces. So what we're trying to show, I'm getting a little bit of somebody's talking a little bit, sorry. So what we're showing here is the idea that you narrow the street where people actually drive to 2 lanes, put parallel parking in, and then add that layer of landscape, which is really missing now. Bringing the landscape and street trees through the space, bringing in that other layer of curb planters or some kind of lower level landscape that provides that extra flexibility, color, and level of visual quality. Now we're showing the middle as some archway, some cool lighting feature, a gateway feature in the middle. That's kind of the crux of all of this, aligning with that great space that the Garden Club maintains all the way to Main, that kind of comes through. And what we're showing is how that could work with a parking lot improvements. Right now, it's entirely asphalt. It's entirely impermeable surface, which means stormwater just flows off of it, sheets off of it into a drain, which we want to try to manage in a better way. So we added landscape. We added walkways that come through, connecting all the way through, thinking about this all as kind of one space, one place that can be cut off from Lake, from Orchard, and create a space that could be an event space. And what I heard is that we used to have a couple thousand people out here for events every once in a while, just closing it off. So the idea that we can create that special, unique environment that has a higher level of landscape, higher level of hardscape, almost a linear plaza space, lending itself to a really cool, unique place to have events, whether it's a market or music at certain times. It's a really flexible type environment. Some images that we showed along with this, and I tell you, when we were at the wine walk, people were effusively praising. They were so excited about this idea. And I mean, everybody, we were standing right there. I was pointing at it, like, look at what it is now, and come back and look at this image and tell me, could it be better? And people got it. And these are the things that they thought were really interesting. The gateway element, the covered structure, just the idea that you can have a really simple, almost plaza and gathering spaces for events to happen, and maybe even some kind of permanent structure that would be for an outdoor market, which I've seen in some traditional downtowns, and a couple other images that people really responded well to. And this is a shared street that's in Batavia, and the idea that it's curbless, cars come through here, but pedestrians rule. If you're in a car, you're going to go pretty slow. It just slows things down, and you can close it off. And that's the idea there. And then getting into, looking at the space, the bandshell space and Skidmore Drive, and how all of that functions. And, a lot of thought about the bandshell, and a lot of differing thoughts on it. But in what was preferred ultimately, and that we showed, was really just enhancing around the existing bandshell, and maybe to me is a functional thing. Right now, there's a bandshell with a lawn, but then there's this, Skidmore kind of comes through and cuts it off. There's some picnic tables and stuff there, the wood picnic tables that don't necessarily, I feel like, relate to the space that well. And then there's the hill that kind of comes up to the wetland area. And what we're showing here is the idea that, okay, well, if we're going to have a bandshell, can we orient to it? Can we use that hill as almost an amphitheater type space with stepped seat walls coming down, so you can actually orient toward it, cutting Skidmore off? The traffic doesn't really need to go through here on a daily basis necessarily. And then you create more of a cohesive space with maybe a little bit of, if you wanted to have the picnic tables out here, you could still have it. And the idea that you're getting, maybe you're improving that parking lot to get some trees in there, really screening on the side of it. A lot of people talked about the backs of the buildings, which we can't necessarily change, but can we screen it and focus? And that was the idea here, and just some images for that. And then enhancing that parking lot, so maybe there's permeable pavers, better stormwater management, those types of things that also look aesthetically better than just an asphalt parking lot. And then finally, and obviously last but not least, the vacant property. I'm just showing you, we did 3 concepts for this, okay? 3 different looks at what it is. given the program that Deb went through, given the things that people told us they wanted to see. So trying to really get everything in there. And so we had done 3 concepts and then gotten feedback and refined the preferred concept, which I did present to this board in the past, but just quickly as a reminder, as we get ready to move forward with more detailed design on this. But as we looked at this and the things that people wanted to see, thinking about, the idea of having some kind of flexible pavilion, amphitheater space, really using the topography of the site in a way that engages that. Obviously the feature of opening up the creek, getting it out of the pipe, opening it and making it a natural feature that people can get to see, dare I say touch in some way. I mean, just being closer to the water in some way. And so some steps down to that creek, a bridge element that would be a feature and be a natural place to stand and kind of enjoy that as you're looking at the creek and toward the wetlands. The idea that there could be a concession / bathroom type building on the site in this orientation at every corner, just really engaging people as they enter this site at Gateway Plaza that relates to your downtown Main Street, enhancing the crossing toward the band shell and making sure that we're really addressing those corners and having a walkway that kind of comes through and around. So flexible event space, places to put tents along the edges if you're going to have a market, changing depot as the idea of actually having some diagonal parking along the street and maybe making that one way. This was something that was discussed quite a bit, but for daily use, if somebody was driving and wanted to take their kid to the playground, having a place for them to park very conveniently. And then the idea of that kind of splash pad area that relates to the playground. That's often where, you'll find families and kids around water, around those types of elements. So getting all those kind of spaces in there and relating it back to this newfound creek walk area with an overlook and all of those amenities that becomes the hub, the place in Antioch. So with that, a couple more images of kind of that vision and what we presented as we look forward to designing this a little bit more detailed, but just giving you some of that flavor of where we are headed as we take that as a jumping off point. And the last part of this is in that plan that we've submitted is thinking about the implementation. And this links directly to that discussion that Jim has been having about capital improvements and budgets and thinking about all these different projects, because we know it's a lot. We always knew it was a lot. So we put budget numbers to these projects and just trying to break them out into different pieces so that as you guys go forward, as you think about what your expenditures are, what you're willing to invest in, you have a guide. Now, as Jim has been talking about and as we've talked about, it's a guide, knowing that once we get into detailed design, we're able to kind of put more specific numbers to different elements. So this helps just talk about that and put it in context of all the other projects you guys have going on, because we know you have a lot. I've sat on 2 meetings with you guys the last month, listening to the different projects and all the things that you're weighing and considering. And we want to be fiscally responsible. Part of our charge was to put all of these, this was a big part of it, is like, get the ideas out there, do some designs that match our character, put some budget numbers to it so we can talk about what the priority is. When we got into it, I didn't know what that was. I didn't know if it was Main Street. I didn't know if it was Toft. And I certainly didn't know that the vacant parcel was going to be the one that really came out in the wash as a first high level priority. It's just the way it worked out. And so now here we are, we put this in the matrix. We think about how those priorities shake out. You guys can have that discussion, thinking about funding sources, grants, all those great things. And the good part about doing a project like this, a plan like this, is now you're teed up to go for the grant. Now you're teed up to say, hey, wait, Jim's got this list of grants. Michael Garrigan's got this list of grants, Safe Routes to School, ITEP, whatever it may be. Here it's coming up. Look, we already have a design. We have a thought about what it can be. We have a budget so we can apply for it easier. You're not starting from ground zero and trying to lift it. And that to me is a big value to you guys. And the last part of that is we have this, and this is formative. This is for you guys to start filling out. In there's an implementation matrix that kind of helps you define in these kind of in years, in segments, all the projects, where they should go in this priority as you move forward and you deliberate on those and have those discussions. With that, I'll stop talking. I really appreciate your time. We've enjoyed really working on this project. Obviously, we'll answer questions and hang around, but I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your report. And I just want to make sure that the trustees have a chance to ask any questions or comment on this. I'll ask the clerk, are we going to be moving this for approval at the next board meeting? Okay, so we will, I'll start with trustee Pierce.
I really like this. I'm excited that we're working downtown. I see so much potential. I do want to define, as we're discussing budgeting, am I doing the math correctly? If we were to do everything all at once, wave some magic wand, get magical funding, somebody would drop $1 bazillion on us. We're talking about $27 million or so.
I honestly, trustee Pierce, I didn't add it up. That sounds right as just the overall, as an overall number. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's my only question.
Trustee Masek.
Mine's always concerned about the number, so we got to phase this out because
Yep.
we don't have $27 million to spend today.
Trustee Peterson.
I'm thrilled to see this. It all looks wonderful. I wish I could wave a magic wand too. But, you know, we have to be fiscally responsible and phase it out. I agree with trustee Mason, and we'll prioritize it and go forward and try and get funding.
Trustee Bluthart.
I really enjoyed or appreciated all the work put into this, and the ideas that I've seen in here are great. Once again, I agree with all the other trustees that we have to figure out how to pay for this and make it work, but it's a great start, and thank you for all your efforts so far.
Trustee Berman.
I think it looks great. I agree with the rest of the trustees. I think it needs to be broken down and done in phases, and we need to prioritize it and just go from there.
Trustee Dominiac.
I echo the comments. I think the ideas are great. I'm not sure how we can approve this until we spend some more time thinking about prioritization, thinking about timelines, thinking about costs. So, you know, I think this is a great target, but I think next steps really are to the point of the presentation, look at, you know, what are we going to do first and fill out those timelines, because obviously we're not going to spend $27 million, and it may be even a 15-year effort. You know, I'm excited about this because it really validates the work that was done. And for those of you that weren't on the board at the time, similar suggestions came from the Economic Development Task Force and a plan put together by them that was presented to those of us that were on the board. So it's nice to see that all of those ideas were validated. I think that it would be helpful if we could start also thinking about, as we're going through this process of trying to prioritize and figure out where do we start. And obviously we are all in agreement that we need to do something with the parcel formerly known as the Pittman property. But then from my perspective, and I'm just sharing that with you, I think the next target would be Main Street. But even beyond Main Street, there are some simple things that were recommended 2 years ago that have not been implemented. And I think it would be great if we could start taking some of that low-hanging fruit. For example, one of the recommendations was that we do some things with the garbage enclosures that are behind Main Street on the east side and to improve those. And look at what's happening behind the buildings on the west side of Main Street in terms of garbage enclosures. Another recommendation at the time was to look at our awnings. And there was a survey done by a gentleman whose name escapes me that looked at all of the awnings, and he made recommendations for replacing, cleaning, and they look okay. I think it would be nice to resurrect that, take a look at it, and consider working with business owners on Main Street and Lake Street to start to implement improvements there, because those are the kind of cosmetic things that, it's like, combing your hair when you go out, you take time to make it look nice. And so the other thing I think we need to put into place is a program where we are cleaning the sidewalks on Main Street and Lake Street and Top. I think about after the 4th of July, after the Thanksgiving Christmas parade, the next day we had Shop Local and the streets were filthy. And I think that, the business owners have repeatedly brought forward that they're concerned about the fact that, the streets and the sidewalks don't get cleaned. So that's another little thing that we could do, and maybe set up a program on a weekly basis to wash those down. In terms of the crosswalks in the parking lots, we talked about just even painting the parking spots and freshening them up. The crosswalks, we talked about doing some things to put in some unique crosswalks. I think Trustee Pierce had put out on Facebook a couple of years ago a suggestion for looking at doing things with crosswalks that he had seen in another community. So I think these are the kinds of things that, while we're going through the process of trying to figure out how we tackle these bigger projects, let's start kind of cleaning the house a little bit so that what we have today looks better. But I think it's great what's here, and it's a big chunk to bite off on, and we're going to have to figure that out.
All right, thank you, Trustee. Any other trustees want to comment? Otherwise, I would suggest that we move this to the next board meeting, and then trustees and staff, with obviously invitation to the public, maybe at our next quarterly meeting, just focus on this plan and prioritizing those, and kind of move this forward if that works. All right. Thank you for your presentation. We'll see you again soon.
All right, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is Administrator Keim, I believe, or maybe it's Zeta, but a preliminary budget discussion, which I believe was distributed to the trustees this evening.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I've provided each of you a first draft. This is literally hot off the presses. It is basically a compilation of all the operational department requests at this point. Consider this a jumping off point. This is not a budget I would come to you and recommend that you approve. This is where we're beginning our budget process. This is meant to give you a glimpse of what our operational costs, with things that we've talked about, additional positions, additional initiatives, doing different things. Staff, of course, we'll listen to those things as they come up at the board meetings and through conversations. And we tried to include just about everything that we can, and see where it is. So I like to say, well, we're going to have to climb the mountain. How big is the mountain we have to climb? Before we make that plan of how we're going to do it, let's see what it really is we're trying to do. This budget does not have any capital in it. There is no capital other than servicing debt. You might see some numbers in a capital line item, but those are servicing leases or other debts that you're obligated to do. So, really, I don't intend to have a long discussion. I don't expect a lot of feedback at this point in time. As as you have time, take a look at the budget. From here, our goal, hopefully we'll see a April approval, but from here, our goal would be to get this budget realistic. Determine how much you're comfortable spending operationally, what you're going to have left as far as, money to do capital with. There are certainly things that we probably forgot to put in this initial draft that will come up over the next couple of months. There are probably things in here that we're going to take out of this budget. So don't think of this as at all set in stone. This budget will change over 100 times between now and April. Staff will be going through it line by line at this point in time. Now that we kind of see what we have, what we're up against here, and I want you really just to focus on the top line, your revenues, your general fund revenues and general fund expenses. Right now, if we didn't do any capital, didn't pave any streets, didn't buy any vehicles, did no project work, you're $700-something-thousand of you would burn if we pass this. You'd go through $700-something-thousand worth of cash that would not be available for other uses like capital. You could sustain this type of budgeting for a couple of years before you would have no more cash, no way to deficit spend. I guess there is going to be some heavy lifting, I'm going to say, some conversations. I would like you all to make time. You're going to get invitations to meet with Zeta, myself, to the extent Joy is still involved in this, and she is still involved in this. The department head and the liaison, we're going to meet, sit down at a table. These are typically 1 to 2 hour meetings. We go line by line, but also know that this is a committee of the whole. So any of you can ask questions about anybody's budget. You don't just represent a department. You are a liaison to a department. But it's fair game if any one of you wants to talk about public works or parks or police or the administration or what's going on. That's how the committee of the whole works. So don't feel like you're confined, to only talk about a particular department. But what we typically do as staff is to try to get the liaisons comfortable with their department's budget and be a liaison to the board and advocate. When we start talking about the budget presentations and each of the directors, if they come up here and tell you what their budget initiatives are and what they plan to do and try to justify the request for expenditures, we would expect the liaison that helped prepare that budget and tweak that budget to represent to all of you and advocate for that budget. As you know, this isn't you're at large. This can't be a fight like between departments who gets more of the cut of the pie. You really have to think big picture on how we really make this, how we make the overall picture work. So I am simply introducing the budget where we're at this early juncture. I don't expect a lot of work to be done tonight, but know that the next couple of months will be some heavy lifting to get this. I'm confident we'll get there. We haven't been there in a while, but we've been in a place where we needed to do some hard work on budgeting. And we'll get, I think, to a good place eventually where you're comfortable with the operational budget, comfortable that we're funding the right capital. And I guess that I'll cut it short at that. Be happy to answer any questions if I can. I will tell you, I have not had a lot of time to study this budget. I've seen the first draft for about 24 hours, and that draft changed actually this afternoon. So I'm not really prepared to answer questions about specifics on this budget. I've not gone through it line by line yet. That's kind of what happens next. This is a kind of a raw version based on all the department head requests compiled for you. So you can kind of see, here's where we're at this point in time.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on this iteration of the budgeting? All right, I'm sure we'll be talking about this a lot over the next
Yep.
2 or 3 months. So at least we got
24 hours.
we got to start. Thanks, Administrator Keim. Next, you can obviously probably stay up here because the next one is the discussion regarding capital projects and the rankings from the trustees.
So we talked a little bit last time about, please help, the board should help us prioritize. I put down 8 of the, there's obviously more than 8 projects going on. I assume you want to pave some roads and keep your police fleet and public works fleet up to date. Tonight, you just had a glimpse of several new projects that, now we have some way to quantify and some way to define. All of these projects will be entered into a capital plan. It's going to go far beyond these 8 projects that you've looked at, but I've given you 3 pieces of paper with how the board has ranked the projects, and the lowest number is, of course, would be the highest priority. I asked staff to rank them as well, so you can have the benefit of seeing what your staff thinks. Then we combined them. Put everybody's ranking in and see how that landed. So I guess tonight, any feedback, you could say, Jim, you're crazy. We don't think this is how we should do this. Or, to me, I definitely pull something out of this. Staff and the board ranked, the Pittman property, or property formerly known as Pittman, as number 1. In both cases, both groups had that 59 bike path ranked as 8. So, that gives that when I start to build the capital plan, which is underway, it gives me a sense of what should get funded first here. I don't want to build a plan around a project that you don't seem to have ranked very high. So this is very helpful to me. But any feedback you can give me, to help set the priorities and objectives. I'm going to do my very best to present a realistic plan that has a shot of getting funded. There are going to be a number of projects that we don't have any funding identified, and spending a lot of time putting timelines on projects that we don't have funding for, don't know where that funding, that to me becomes a little bit difficult. And that's what I think one of the problems with our existing capital plan. There's paper projects that don't have funding sources that just kind of year to year. I think I've had a village hall and a public works project in the capital plan since the first one we did 15 or 12 years ago, whenever it was. And nothing really happens. Well, I think a capital plan is going to be something hopefully you could execute and do. It's my job to kind of figure out, you help me get the order. I try to figure out where the funding can come from. We have to cash flow all of these. We have to figure out when, what the timing is. If we're financing them, what is our year-to-year cash flow and debt service? Some of these things you probably want to pay for with cash. Some of these things you may want to finance with a municipal bond or a debt certificate, or maybe there's other types of funding that we can find. But the goal would be to do as much of this on a prioritized basis as possible with the funds on hand, and lay out that plan, so you can see for the next 5 years, here's what we're going to do. And I would like it to be something that we, like I say, have a shot at actually doing, not just, move the projects in year 5 to year 6 to year 7 to year 8, which is kind of what's been happening. And that really, to me, isn't a plan as much as it is a wish list.
Well, thank you for circulating this. Yeah, of course, I'll go on. Trustee Pierce.
I want to thank Jim for starting this exercise and the staff for giving input. I'll be honest with you, I'll give priority to the village board's input. I appreciate the staff's input to help give me some thinking and thoughts. I think we really need to know the cost of each of these because, as was said tonight, Pittman property is $10 million. We know the Grimm Road's probably about $10 million. So that's, we're up to $37 million. Well, $1 million.
You got them right. You put some numbers with yours, and
Yeah.
You were pretty close.
I realize them. So we need to know I think the whole board needs to know what the numbers are. And then we need to know what the possible avenues of either monies are or no monies are. Because if there's no money, you're right, you're wasting your time on it, but there's possibilities. We need to discuss what those possibilities are and where the magic wand is.
That's in the works right now.
Thank you, trustee Masek.
Well, this is gonna be my respectfully comment. When you commingle staff don't live here. We live here. And a lot of this is public safety over flowers. You get the Route 59 bike path, kids, public safety, police parking lot, public safety. So it's flowers over public safety. You want to look at trees and flowers over public safety. You want kids walking. So staff, when you commingle staff, when they don't live here, they don't walk the streets, they don't have their kids on here, I think this is commingled. And I think you got to separate those numbers out. You can put what the board thinks and what staff thinks.
You have those.
I've got, oh, is there two numbers here?
You have 3 sheets.
Oh, I didn't see that. Sorry. Didn't see the third sheet
I'm sorry. Yeah.
because I'm kind of surprised. I'm actually surprised how low public safety went on this list for protecting our police and having the kids on Route 59, public safety over flowers. That's all I gotta say.
Thank you, trustee Peterson.
I don't have anything else to say at this moment. I agree with trustee Pierce. Have some numbers on this before, make a comment on what the real priority would be and how we're gonna fund it. That's all.
Thank you, trustee Luthart.
No comments.
Trustee Bourbon.
Sorry. Clear my throat. I agree with trustee Pierce and trustee Masek. What they said.
Thank trustee Dominiac. Oh, she on mute?
Yes, muted.
Sorry, I think we need to see numbers.
Okay. All right. Well, we will keep this
It's a good
project
first
moving.
step, Jim, I think it's a good first step, but there's obviously other things that aren't on here, and what are those numbers? And I'm assuming these are the big ones.
Yeah, I really just picked the ones that get talked about the most and was interested to know how these would rank. So,
All right. Well, thank you. And I know you're working on the funding source sheet. I've seen that matrix in progress. So thank you for presenting this. The last item we have on the committee of the whole agenda, when I find it, I know is the Oakwood Knolls presentation request. We have Jerry Bingold in person. I believe we also have Greg here, Deborah Rentner. I don't know if she's online, and anybody else that and Mike O'Mara. And just for the record, I have asked trustee Pierce to kind of take the lead for the board in the discussions regarding this item. So Jerry, the floor is yours. And I know there is a PowerPoint or presentation in our packet as well.
And I promise to be brief and not ask for money.
All right, well, you got,
Or a
you're
lot.
on our good side already.
A lot of money. Oakwood Knolls is respectfully requesting an assessment of the Bridgewood Drive culvert to ensure it's safe to remove sediment underneath the culvert. Now, I'll get to that in a second, but I want to give you a square in red is.
Jerry, just make sure you're talking into the microphone because the people on
Okay.
Zoom, especially trustee Dominiac, won't be able to hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. The area in red is the property that Oakwood Knolls was bequeathed in 1958. And we were quick deeded 3 properties, the Channel and Lagoon, which you can see just around that arrow. That's the Abbey. A little red circle in the right corner is the Channel and Lagoon. It's one piece of property. And then we own properties for a beach, park, and a pier. And we got the properties for nothing, and we had no deed access to money. So everything we spend to maintain these properties to give the Oakwood Knolls residents access to the lake is basically raised by us. So our budget's around $2,000, $3,000 a year. And that was great till about 60 years ago when the channel opened up and boats could use it and go in and out. But after 60 years, it's filled with sediment. Next picture.
And Mr. Bickle, just for clarification, the association is a voluntary association, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
voluntary nonprofit. And I'm on the board, so is Mike, so is Greg. And Debbie is on the board. And then we formed a Voice of Cross Lake, which are all the residents around the lake, a couple hundred people on a social platform, all interested in maintaining the health of the lake. We know it's our responsibility. So we got to come up with a plan and figure out how to get the money. So we've been having discussions with the mayor and the administrator about working together, not to take money out of your budget, but to help us access money that we can't otherwise do unless we work with a municipality. So our ask is right there. This was built, who knows when, long time before I got here. And so we had a dredger come out, give us a bid, 44 grand to dredge from the beginning of the lake up to the bridge. And on the other side of that bridge culvert is a lagoon. They're totally filled with sediment right to the very top. And he took one look at that bridge and said, ain't going in there. So we came back to the village and said, look, the contractor, and we've had to, they need an assessment of the safety of putting their machine and people through that culvert, removing debris. You can see it's almost full, right up to the halfway mark. Panels are falling. You'll see another picture with ice sickles coming down. And so that's what we need, an assurance from the village that we can actually proceed with raising money and getting the work done to dredge the channel. And without that, we're dead in the water. We have to stop. We can't go through there's no point in going only so far and just stopping. So it'll just fill back up again. Next slide. But there is some good news. You can see the lagoon and the channel completely outlined there. It's about 1,200 feet long from the mouth of the lake to the lagoon, and there's a bridge where the break is, you can see. Next slide. All those arrows are a group of culverts that take the water from the stormwater drainage system of the village and have been for years collecting that water. It's gone into the channel lagoon, and it's one of 3 sources of sediment. And property owners like us that own the lagoon and channel by state law are required to maintain drainage systems. Well, that's great. We have the liability and the responsibility, but we don't have the money. So we're sitting there with a completely full channel and a completely full lagoon, and it's quick silt. So if somebody falls out of a boat, they'll go immediately about 6 feet deep into the silt, and it could be a really bad thing. So we don't have any way to take care of that liability. And so we're sitting on it. We even talked about a whole bunch of different options on how to remove the liability. So that's part of our discussion with you guys. We've got to dredge it or get rid of it because we can't hold that liability. Next one. That's another silt problem. St. Benedict's Abbey, Father Patrick and I and our group have been working for the last 2 years to stop a major source of silt and water into that channel. That's a farm field with the Abbey in the background, and all the water drains down and goes from several acres and goes into the lagoon and then over to the channel. Next slide. There used to be a berm. Berm broke. So now all the water falls. It's about 37 cubic feet per second, which is a lot of water coming through that berm when it rains in a storm. So next one. You can see the water there. We took a picture of it. It flooded Oakwood Knolls 2 times. Jim Kime knows about this. People were complaining. So next slide. Yeah. Guy across the street directly from where that berm broke, putting sandbags out to protect his property and his basement. It's going down the street And all those homes, driveways are down and they're flooding. Next one.
No, that's Bridgewood up in 128, road that goes out the backside of Oakwood Knolls.
228 is the one with the sandbag. And then you go into Oakwood Knolls, that car up there, if it goes straight across Nelson Road, would go into the Abbey. Well, it's flooding. Next one. And then behind Oakwood Knolls subdivision, it all captures. And along the streets, sidewalks. Next one. Abbey Estates. Next slide. And then this goes into culverts that go right into the channel, and you can see the chocolate colored water. Well, everybody around the lake sees it. And there's a very interesting thing going on right now with the social media platform. We're slowly killing the lake and filling it up with sediment. And there's no way to stop it at this point because we have no money. So next slide. And there goes the chocolate water right out to the blue lake. It goes counterclockwise around the lake so everybody gets to see it. And then they say, where's this coming from and how do we stop it? Well, the riparian owners on the channel have to repair their banks. The stormwater has to be stopped from flowing from the Abbey. And the stormwater system might be a way that the working with Antioch could help us get a municipal stormwater grant of some type to at least do some of it, dredging. So that's kind of what we're working at. But all that stops if we can't get a safety inspection on the culvert. Next slide. So our plan is to start dredging at the lake, go all the way down underneath the culvert, lagoon, and then pump it up the dredged material to the Abbey, where it will then go back on the ground where it first came from. And in the meantime, they've taken a lot of their crop area out of production and put it into natural ground cover. So we are already stopping some of the runoff into the lagoon. Plus we rebuilt volunteered activity. Oakwood Knolls rebuilt the berm, actually maintained it. So it's now back better than it was before. Next one. I walked through that. And now's a good time to send somebody through because they can get a good look at it. There's no water in it. And it's pretty darn thick ice. So I would really encourage you guys to think if you could possibly help us by getting an inspection now. And the next one, lagoon shut. It's a safety hazard. So that's the ask. If you guys would like to help us, we would certainly appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. And not to piggyback on this presentation, we have met with Oakwood Knolls several times. And this is one of three issues that they were dealing with last year. Basically, the lake was drained by a private citizen that controlled the dam in the side of Wisconsin. That has been through the work of the association and the members remediated, I believe. The berm, the Abbey has repaired that. So this is the last remaining. They repaired that. So this is the last remaining item that is choking out Cross Lake. I mean, I have family that have a house there, and the lake was literally almost empty last year from the water being let out in April and the drought we had. I don't think anybody was on that lake with their boats hardly at all last year. So just a little history on that. So this has been ongoing. And Jerry and his group have been here meeting with Jim and myself. So a lot of this has already, two of the three items have been taken care of already. This is the third. So with that being said, Trustee Pierce, if you have any questions or comments.
Well, first of all, I want to thank the Oakwood Knolls people for all their hard work on this. And they're right, they are a voluntary organization. There's about 550 homes there. And if you go to most neighborhoods that have association, every single home in that neighborhood is a member of the association. I think with their hard work and their improvements and making things nicer and having more activities, they've gotten up to about 120 homes or so in that ballpark
Yeah,
as members
$80 a year.
at $80 a year. So they're not like a normal homeowners association that's collecting a lot of money and getting it from every house and has professional management and everything. They're doing it on their own. So that being said, meeting with them, I think they're right. The priority here is that bridge. I know we've got engineers that are available to inspect, and I think it does need to be inspected just to reassure whether it needs to be worked on or not, or if it's safe to proceed working there. There's probably debate each way. I don't know. I'm not a professional, so I can't answer that. I do want to let the board know that if that bridge had to be replaced, and you would be surprised at the traffic flow over that bridge. There is a lot of traffic on that bridge. I would say it's just as much as the traffic almost is what's on coming out of Sequoia Terrace across the Sequoia Creek at the bottom over by Public Works. Hillside,
Yeah.
thank you. I can't remember the name. And when we replaced the Hillside Bridge, how much was that? About $1 million? Mr. Kime?
I seem to recall it was in the $300,000 range at that time, but that was several years ago. The prices are going to be different. The section we did under Orchard is about 600,000. If you'll remember, that was more recent. We used concrete pipe for that. I don't recommend we put more metal culverts in the ground because we see what happens with them. And at some point in time, somebody's going to have to replace the metal ones as they deteriorate. So moving forward, I think we should use concrete. It costs more money, but it'll be a more permanent fix. But for this one, I think $400,000 or $500,000 would be probably a reasonable estimate.
All right, so I'd like the board to all agree that this is a priority to check the safety of that bridge. Not only for dredging through it, but driving over the top of it. And then I'd like them to ask the board to direct the engineers while they're over there reviewing the bridge, that they inspect and check all the drainage systems going in there to see exactly what impact we're having through our village drainage system. If it's all silt coming from the farm across the border for the Abbey, or if it's actually we're contributing. So, or if our drainage systems aren't working correctly over there, or if they're silted in and the water can't drain through there and flood into somebody's home. So I think we need to have an answer of that.
May I interrupt?
Yes.
We have a very extensive current study of the entire watershed around the Abbey that's contributing the flow of both water and silt and the peak times. It was a very, very expensive study, top-notch professionally, and the Abbey paid for it.
Okay.
And we've got access to use it. So the data is done, it's there in a book.
Did they review the actual condition of each of the culvert points, or?
No, they stayed, well, the one main culvert that goes from the Abbey, there's only one or two. There's one under Nelson Road, but there's one right by Abbey Estates that takes most of the sediment. So that's the one they focused on.
I'd like to know how the whole system's working there.
I'll send you the report.
Okay, thank you. And I'll
Electronically available.
send it to Mr. Kime and let him share it with our engineers.
He's- he's got it.
And then I think it's also, as he mentioned, I think it's an easy ask for the village to help provide guidance when they're writing grants and finding money.
Absolutely. And yes, we definitely want to be able to help with the grants signature part. And, I know that actually some of the members of this group did have some grant writing experience. So we've been talking about that. All right. Thank you, Trustee Mason.
Simple thing, public safety. If this bridge is potentially bad, so we got to get engineers out yesterday. So stormwater management help, the water's coming from the Abbey. It's not supposed to, water's supposed to stay on your own stuff. They should have retention ponds on their property, not coming over here. We might have to take necessary steps to make them keep their water. So we got to move forward with this, especially if cars are driving over this. This is bad, public safety.
All right, thank you, Trustee Peterson.
I agree with both of them. It's public safety and we need to jump on it right away.
Thank you. Trustee Bluthart,
Agree as well.
trustee Berman,
Agree.
trustee Dominiac.
Agree.
All right, thank you, Jerry. I believe I will talk to Mr. Keim. There have been some preliminary discussions with HR Green on this, so we will expedite that based on the discussion tonight. So thank you. And I was a little bit off on the timing on that for when we get into the regular board meeting, but any other business on the committee of the whole meeting? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the committee of the whole meeting.
So moved.
Motion trustee Bluthart, second trustee Masek, I believe. Roll call, please.
Pierce.
Aye.
Mason.
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
Luther.
Yes.
Berman.
Yes.
Dominiac.
Yes.
6 voting yes, motion carries. Meeting's adjourned at 7:51. Let's reconvene here at 7:56. All right, calling the village board meeting to order at 7:59 PM. Roll call, please.
Trustee Pierce.
Present.
Trustee Mason.
Here.
Trustee Peterson. Here. Trustee Luther.
Here.
Trustee Berman.
Here.
Trustee Dominiac.
Here.
Mayor Gardner.
Present. We have the next item on the agenda is a mayoral report. This is the second time we're coming back with consideration and approval of an ordinance amending section 1-5-10 of the Municipal Code of Antioch regarding the deputy local liquor control commissioner, ordinance number 21-01-04. We had the first reading on February 9th. There were changes requested, and we're here for the second reading, I believe. So with that, I'd ask for a motion and a second.
Move to approve.
For a second.
Motion trustee Dominiac, second trustee Bluthart. Discussion trustee Pierce.
Do we have any idea what the estimated approved pay will be for this individual? Or is that to be set by the village board? Another. Okay.
I would prefer it set by the village board, yeah. Trustee Masek,
I got.
trustee Peterson,
No comment.
trustee Bluthart,
No comment.
trustee Berman,
No comment.
trustee Dominiac.
Will there be a separate ordinance for the pay?
Yeah, I mean, actually, it's, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, may I address? Yes, Mr. Chair, may I address it? Trustee, yes. So if you look in that subsection D, it says that the village board shall fix from time to time by ordinance or resolution, the compensation. So we'll do it by ordinance and just make sure that it's in, it's an ordained number rather than a resolved number.
Thank you.
Only a lawyer can say yes in 25 words, so I
Yes.
apologize.
In charge.
Right.
All right, next, all right, so based on any other comments, if not, roll call to approve.
Pierce.
Aye.
Mason.
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
Luther.
Yes.
Berman.
Yes.
Dominiac.
Yes.
6 voting yes, motion carries. All right, we have another opportunity to address the board. If anybody is still on, I know somebody had their hand up earlier. I'm assuming she probably is asleep by now, so we will go on to the next item on the agenda, the consent agenda. We have one item on the consent agenda. Any trustees wish to remove that item from the agenda? If not, I'd entertain a motion in a second to approve the consent agenda.
So move.
Motion trustee Masek, second trustee Peterson. Roll call, please.
Pierce.
Aye.
Mason.
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
Luther.
Yes.
Berman.
Yes.
Dominiac.
Yes.
6 voting yes, 0 no, motion carries. First item on the regular business agenda is consideration and approval of payments of accounts payable as prepared by staff in the amount of $274,602.71. I entertain a motion in a second, please.
So moved.
Motion trustee Peterson,
Second.
second trustee Berman. Discussion, trustee Pierce,
No discussion, Your Honor.
trustee Masek, trustee Peterson,
No questions, Your Honor.
trustee Bluthart,
No questions.
trustee Berman,
No questions.
trustee Dominiac.
No questions.
I think I had one question for the payment on the restaurant. Was that was something that was that part of the business grant program that was previously approved? Facade?
It was a facade grant.
Okay, that's what, just clarifying. Okay. Roll call, please.
Pierce,
Aye.
Mason,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Luther,
Yes.
Berman,
Yes.
Dominiac,
yes,
6 voting yes, 0 no, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is consideration and approval of an ordinance amending section 4-2C-4 of the Municipal Code of Antioch regarding the hours of business for establishments which sell alcohol. This is ordinance number 22-02-07. I'd entertain a motion in the second, waiving the second reading.
So move, waiving the second reading.
Motion, trustee Peterson.
Second.
Second, trustee Bluthart. Discussion, trustee Pierce,
No discussion, Your Honor.
trustee Masek,
No question.
trustee Peterson,
No question.
trustee Bluthart,
No question.
trustee Berman,
None.
trustee Dominiac.
no comment,
Roll call, please.
Pierce,
Aye.
Mason,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Luther,
Yes.
Berman,
Yes.
Dominiac,
no,
5 voting yes, 1 voting no, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is consideration and approval of an ordinance amending section 4-13-1 of the Municipal Code of Antioch regarding video game licensing. Ordinance number 21-02-08. I'd entertain a motion in a second, waiving the second reading.
So move.
Motion, trustee Peterson.
Waiving the second reading.
Thank you. Motion, trustee Peterson.
Second.
Second, trustee Bluthart. Just for clarification, this was regarding the change in the terminal fee that we discussed at the committee of the whole meeting. So any discussion, trustee Pierce,
No.
trustee Masek,
None.
trustee Peterson,
No.
trustee Bluthart,
No.
trustee Berman,
No.
trustee Dominiac.
no,
Roll call, please.
Pierce,
Aye.
Mason,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Luther,
Yes.
Berman,
Yes.
Dominiac,
yes,
6 voting yes, 0 voting no, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is consideration and approval of an ordinance adding one more Class B restaurant liquor license for RR&T Management LLC, doing business as Szechuan Palace, to be located at 1144 South Main Street, to reflect a change in corporate ownership and prorating fees. This is ordinance number 22-02-09. I entertain a motion in a second, waiving the second reading.
I'll make a motion waiving the second reading.
Motion, trustee trustee Pierce,
Second.
second, trustee Berman. I know that the applicants are here, we're here. If there's any questions of them, so trustee Pierce, I'll go to you first.
This is a question for the attorney. It says adding one more license.
Yes.
Why are we adding a license if they're taking ownership of a current license?
Because every time that we, I'm pulling it up, every time that we change, we go by attrition. So every time that we change over a license, it is reduced and then added back in. And that's been traditionally how the village does it. Some villages do it a different way, where there's just a set number of licenses, but we go by attrition, so it'd be reduced and then taken through.
Okay.
Trustee Masek,
I got no question.
trustee Peterson,
No question.
trustee Bluthart,
No question.
trustee Berman,
No question.
trustee Dominiac.
no question,
Roll call, please.
Pierce,
Aye.
Mason,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Luther,
Yes.
Berman,
Yes.
Dominiac,
yes,
6 voting yes, 0 voting no, motion carries. And you missed all the excitement. All right. Next item on the agenda is number 6, consideration and approval of a resolution authorizing and granting and conveyance of certain easement rights to the Board of Library Trustees of the Antioch Public Library District and the execution of all necessary documents to effectuate such grant for the Village of Antioch, County of Lake, State of Illinois, resolution number 22-11. I'd entertain a motion in a second.
So moved.
Trustee, motion trustee Peterson, I think second was trustee Dominiac, is that correct?
yes,
Right. I know that the president of the board is here if there's any questions, or I don't know if Administrator Keim needs to answer any questions, but I'll open that to the trustees. Trustee Pierce.
Well, first of all, before we start that, I just want to let them know, since they were asking me earlier when their item would be on the agenda, it just occurred. So you were approved. So if you'd like to leave, you can leave, or you can stay here and listen to us. It's up to your pleasure. But in the meantime, I'm hoping Jim will give us an explanation of what exactly we're easementing over temporarily and permanently.
Thank you.
Certainly. With the construction of the addition to the library that's imminent at this point, I believe we're talking that they're going to start this project in March.
March 1st groundbreaking, I was told today.
They need to relocate a storm sewer that is currently on their property in the location of where the addition would be, along the property line that we share with the Little League Diamond. It's Williams Park, but it's directly west of the Little League Diamond. We have a property line that we share with the library. They're requesting a permanent storm sewer easement to move that storm sewer onto village property. Properly done, it would be placed in an easement that designates that it's their pipe, not ours. The temporary easement would be for the construction of the building. They're going to have to do certain things and come onto our property to actually construct that addition. That addition comes all the way to the property line, Mike, do you remember? Yeah. So the addition goes easternly from the building and will be a 0 lot line addition. So essentially, to build the building on the lot line, they'll have to enter our property. So that would be the temporary nature of that easement. And then there's a second easement where there is an existing parking stall that is in the northeast part of their existing parking lot, where just a corner of the parking stall happens to fall onto village property. Nobody knew it. It's been like that probably since the day it was built, I'm sure. But they noticed it. Their engineers and surveyors picked it up and said, well, okay, maybe we should put an easement on that so that they wouldn't have to relocate that parking stall. It's really of no consequence to us. It's 12 square feet or something of a parking stall that exists on village property. And if you didn't grant it, I don't think it'd be a big deal either way to either party. So that's what we're talking about. The village granting easements to allow the construction, the location of a storm sewer, and to some temporary easement to allow construction. And then that portion of a parking stall.
Right, thank you. Trustee Pierce, yes?
One more question. If they have a 0 lot line build, do they need a variance? Because doesn't most of our residents, if they build up to their lot line, need a variance? Okay. Okay, all right, just want to make sure.
What was the answer to that question? I couldn't hear.
With the approval of the PUD, we've already granted that variance.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Trustee Mason.
Not for expenses, but just protection to the village, the contractors that are going on, their contractors going on our property. I'm assuming their contractors are gonna give the village certificates of insurance, naming the village as additional insureds. And they've got all that in place. So in case future that gets flooded, they do it wrong, stuff like that.
Yes, the answer is yes. I've already asked for that information. I don't know if we've gotten their certificate yet, but before they start construction, they will be required.
Are we doing, are we treating them the same as if another building did, where a bond's in place too?
No, we are not, other than an escrow account to cover any
An escrow
costs we would have. They have to restore, I've talked to the contractors. They are well aware there's a pay item for restoration of this parking lot. They'll have to repave whatever they damage. The insurance will be just like if they were a contractor working for us, but we did not put an extra bond requirement on this. It is a bonded project, though. The library they can only use bonded, performance and payment bond contractors. It's a requirement.
Thank you. Trustee Peterson,
I don't have any questions. Your Honor.
trustee Bluthart,
No questions?
trustee Berman,
No questions.
trustee Dominiac.
Nothing, Your Honor.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Pierce,
Aye.
Mason,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes,
Luther,
Yes.
Berman,
Yes.
Dominiac.
Yes.
6 voting yes, 0 no, motion carries. Item number 7 is consideration and approval of an ordinance authorizing and approving a water tower lease agreement and execution of all necessary documents to effectuate such lease agreement for the Village of Antioch, ordinance number 22-02-10. I'd entertain a motion and a second waiving the second reading.
So moved.
Motion trustee Masek,
Second.
second trustee Peterson. Discussion. Trustee Pierce,
I have no discussion, Your Honor.
trustee Masek.
Yeah, I just want to make one point clear about the reason this is needed is, good point was brought up to me, that anybody that's got an alarm system, especially with Comcast, that their lines where power goes out, they're cut, that alarm system backs up to Verizon. So they use cellular service. You're in Heron Harbor and your house is getting broke in and someone snaps your line or the power goes out. That's the only, there's no cell service in Heron Harbor. Verizon stinks. So anybody that vote no on this would vote. Cell service is needed. This is another public safety needed. And I get the radiation, but everybody's moving this to 6G. That's the next phase already coming in. 5G is going to be phased out here shortly. So it's desperately needed.
Thank you. Trustee Peterson, trustee Bluthart,
No question.
trustee Berman.
I've got some stuff that I'd like to say.
Yeah.
I have a problem with this. There is many factors that go into this, and this is not something that's regulated. They're using studies from, decades ago in regards to this. The towers are not being monitored. They're, as far as the 5G coverage, it's text messages and phone, like cell phones, they're still going to be using the 4G. And unless you put in the small cells everywhere, it's not going to do much just with the water tower. I've been in contact with a few of organizations that specialize into looking into this. For instance, there's firefighters in California in 2004. They fought to oppose, before obviously 5G. So the International Association of Firefighters officially opposed cell towers back then, and they still do to this day. After a study was found for neurological damage in firefighters from the antennas. As everybody knows, we have one on our fire station, and we have our police department that's directly next door to it. So as far as studies, they don't do anything. They'll, just like these telecom companies, they're promising that they're gonna, put these new antennas on, and 5G is gonna be great, but they've been saying that since like the 1990s. They started to replace the copper lines with fiber optic cables, but they never connected that for certain areas, certain people. They most certainly did collect that money, never gave back. It was on telephone bills. And instead of using it for what they stated they were going to use it for, fiber optic, they used it to roll out the wireless technology. And I can verify AT&T did this to our family for years. We could not understand why our bills were that high until I called and spoke with them and finally found out that, yeah, that's what was happening. We had horrible service. It wasn't worth it. As far as, sorry, I understand what Trustee Masek's saying. I know it's important, but they have not done enough studies, basically nothing. There are, however, right here, this doesn't include over 200 studies. It has links to them. I can send them to anybody that wants to look at them. they rolled this out and they did not plan it well. And I don't think that, it's worth risking right now. I think that there's still too many unknowns. And I'm not comfortable with that risk for residents.
Thank you. Trustee Dominiac.
Trustee Berman, I'd like to see what you have there. If you could send it to me, that'd be great. That's all I have.
All right. Any other discussion one time around? Anybody on the side of the dais? Nope. Over here. All right. So no more discussion. I'd ask for a roll call, please.
Pierce,
Aye.
Mason,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Luther,
Yes.
Berman,
Yes, sorry.
Dominiac,
Yes,
All right. 6 voting yes, 0 voting no. Motion carries.
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna say no.
Meant to say no.
Okay.
Sorry.
Let's just to reflect the record. The vote is 5 yes, 1 voting no. Trustee Berman. Motion carries. Do me for a loop there, Katrina. All right. Next one is item number 8, consideration and approval of an emergency ordinance ratifying the mayoral declaration of emergency relating to coronavirus, ordinance number 22-02-11.
move to approve, waiving the second reading.
All right, thank you. We have trustee Dominiac, motion, second trustee Peterson. Roll call, please.
Pierce,
Aye.
Mason,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Luther,
Yes.
Berman,
Yes.
Dominiac,
Yes,
6 voting yes, motion carries. Next item, administrators report. Anything? All right, village clerk report. All right, any trustee reports other than those that were submitted paper? Trustee Pierce.
Yeah, I have a couple items tonight. First of all, the chief updated me on a few things that he thought would be nice for everybody to know. As you remember, Deputy Chief Johnson went to Northwestern's 10-week School of Police Staff and Command. While there, he was elected as the president of their 516th class. Election to this position is a direct indication of the high regard his classmates have for his knowledge and expertise. So we should all be proud that he's representing Antioch well in a very professional manner. They have the department's new officer wellness partnership with 1041 has been launched. They've received very positive feedback from members of the department's FOP executive board who wanted the village and board and administration to know how appreciative the support for the implementation of the program is. Some members of the department in conjunction with the FOP are in the process of planning this year's polar plunge to benefit Special Olympics. And once again, they'll be partnering with the fire department to raise funds. So get your checkbooks out. Oh, he didn't write that. I'm sorry. Right now, the early plans are for a dunk tank event where members of the community are invited to dunk a cop or a fireman donation. Jeff, please tell me when you're in the tank. It's sometime in February. And Commander Aaron Findle has publicly announced his intention to retire this July after 23 years of dedicated service. And then I've got one letter that I'm going to read that was sent to me by the chief. It says, "Dear Trustee Pierce, I'm writing you as the police department's liaison to the village board to recognize one of my colleagues for their service to the Antioch community, and more specifically to a family in our community who found themselves faced with an unimaginable situation. On January 22nd of 2022, Tommy Howe was reported as a missing person following his unexplained disappearance from a scene of a traffic crash that occurred near Green Oaks, Illinois. As the investigation into Tommy's disappearance commenced, it became clear to me that the planned searches would require significant operational resources. This required Commander Smith, who normally fulfills the role of the department's public information officer, to be assigned as operations section chief. Believing this incident was likely to quickly draw media attention, I sought the assistance of our new village communication specialist, Jim Moran. Without hesitation, Jim leapt into action, setting his other priorities aside to take on the critical role of public information officer at the command post within the old school forest preserve. Over the last 2.5 weeks, Jim has worked tirelessly, often late into the evenings and on weekends, to help support the community-wide effort to locate Tommy. Despite the countless difficulties associated with this type of investigation, he effectively drafted several press releases, coordinated multiple interviews, and continuously monitored social media for tips. Although Jim demonstrated the highest level of professionalism and a true mastery of the craft, what I found most impressive was the level of empathy and support he has shown the Howe family. This was evident last week when he willingly gave up time normally spent with his family to help prepare Tommy's parents for a national television interview and remain at their side late into the night, a true showing of Jim's compassion and character. Because of Jim's willingness to take on the challenging role of a police public information officer, I have been able to keep my staff's focus where it needed to be, which is working to find Tommy. As an Antioch's police chief, I am grateful to have such a valuable resource as part of our village team. I would like the members of the board to know that you could not have chosen a better person to fill the new communications role. Thank you for providing the opportunity to express my thanks so that Jim can know how appreciative the chief is of his efforts during this challenging investigation. Sincerely, Chief Gutchow, and I sincerely back those words up too. Thank you very much, Jim. So.
Thank you for, thank you.
And then I have one more personnel action to address. During the last board meeting, one of our board members inadvertently let a personal comment enter the conversation. And I think we approved that in the minutes tonight. I think it would be appropriate at some point if that board member would apologize to the village employee who was.
When I called myself, I'm not smart because I don't read the New York Times.
It shouldn't have been a discussion that in the discussion.
I
You called him out by name and it should have been avoided. The
I didn't say
simplest
his
thing to
name.
do.
I said I.
You said Mike, I listened to the tape.
All right, you can listen all you want.
Okay,
All
I
right.
think the appropriate thing would be an apology to our employee.
We'll thank you for the report. And I just want to ask if any other trustees have a report before we move into, as Jimmy promised me, a very brief executive session.
I have a report.
Oh yeah, trustee Dominiac.
Several things related to economic development, community development, et cetera. First of all, you all have a copy of the economic development newsletter that Michael sent to all of us that lists, obviously confidentially, all the activities related to economic development. And this is something that he's going to be sending out to all of us on a monthly basis. So I'd like to thank him for taking the time to put that together. I want to go back to my comments earlier about what we need to do to clean up the downtown. And I think that whether it's public works or we hire someone, outsource it, I think that whenever we have a big event, we need to make sure that public works or whoever cleans the streets downtown. When we met the other day with the business owners, it's on the tape that Jim sent out to all of us, Jim Rand sent out. Jane Marsky from Hannah's commented on what can we do? Why haven't we done anything about cleaning downtown? And I think when we have these big events, because we keep talking about we want to bring people into Antioch, that we need to get rid of litter and dog waste and everything else that makes our downtown look hideous. Next thing I want to share with you is that the Historic Preservation Commission, which was implemented sometime last year, after the election, I think we populated it. They've been meeting on a monthly basis and have completed a lot of work already. They've done an urban survey and that's completed, and that's basically adding on to a previous survey that was done. And that survey is looking at where are the potential historic properties that could be landmarked by the village. And so they've completed Main Street, Victoria, Hardin, and Spafford. They also are creating an interactive historic map with all the survey forms. And they have been working on Historic Preservation Commission guidelines, which once they approve them, they will recommend those and bring them to the village board for approval and adoption. The mayor held a business roundtable the other day that we all got the tape of, and I think that was a really great effort to start communicating with the businesses. They gave us some input into what we can do to help improve their lives. And the last thing is, Jim, a question for you. Have we ordered any kind of signage as a result of passing the ordinance about truck traffic on Lake Street? the other day I was downtown there on Lake Street and two semis, big dump trucks came by going east on 59, a lot faster than 25 miles an hour. And my thought was, what are we doing to make sure that there's signage that says you can't go that way if you're a big truck? Have we done anything with that, Jim, or do we have anything on order?
I don't know. I'll have to check with Public Works and get back to you.
Thank you. I think that'd be great. That's all I have at this time, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, trustees. All right, I'd ask for a motion to go into executive session without any further business to take place after executive session
So moved.
Litigation.
for litigation.
Second.
Motion trustee Peterson, second trustee Bluthart. Roll call, please.
Pierce.
Aye.
Mason.
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
Luther.
Yes.
Berman.
Yes.
Miniak.
Yes.
All right, 6 voting yes, 0 voting no. Motion carries. We're in executive session for litigation purposes only.